Hello, third and fourth graders. I'm really excited to see you today. I am going to be talking to you about frogs once again. So now, the deal here is that last week you did some research on an animal, and I was really happy with that research. However, today we need to look and compare at two different texts to make sure that we can get different information. Now, why is this important? Well, when I read a book, as we did last week, which we did Frogs by Gail Gibbons, we talked about the importance of getting accurate information, just facts from a book. But when I start looking at other books, as we're going to do today with Frogs by Anne Hendricks, we need to look and make sure that the information is the same, that the facts are the same. And if they're not exactly the same, because maybe one book has more information than the other, this information that you got was still accurate. That means that you can remember that means that you can still go and find that information because it's a fact. It will always be the same no matter what happens. So that's what we're going to be doing today. And as we're doing this, I want us to focus on what we already know about frogs. So we talked about Frogs by Anne Hendricks. And that's the book that we're going to be reading. And we're going to be talking about frogs. What do we know? So I know that frogs are born from eggs because we looked that up last week. We know that frogs breathe through gills and through their lungs. Frogs use long, sticky tongues to catch their food. And here's my frog. So we do know those things. And you might have done it with a lion or with a humpback whale, I think one of you guys did. Whatever your animal is, you're still going to go back and find more information using another ebook. Remember that you can always go to look at the first video I did to make sure that you know how to find that information. But today I want us to focus on where they live. So this is the information I'm going to be asking you about today. I want you to focus on their habitat. Do you see the habitat there? That means, where do they live and why do they live there? Those are two important questions that I want you to answer. So what I'm going to be doing is that I'm going to be looking at the table of contents. And I'm going to get close up so that you can see the table of contents. And if you look at it, it says frogs are fun. I already know that, and that's why I'm coming back to frogs. You might do it with lions or humpback whales. Where frogs live, what is a frog and where frogs live. So I'm going to go to page 9. Well, I went one too far. And it says, where frogs live. Let me go back so that everybody can see here. Frogs have lived on Earth for more than 2 million years. So we know that they live on Earth. They were here even before some dinosaurs. I did not know. That is a fun fact that I need to keep. Now, let's continue reading. Today's frogs live almost everywhere in the world. Hot, wet regions known as the tropics have the most frogs. None live on icy Antarctica. I think I'm going to stop and think here for a second. And I want you to think with me. Frogs, where did the authors say they live? You've got it. They live in hot, wet places. And we can look at it right here. They live everywhere in the world in wet places called the tropics. That, if I stop and think about that, why would they live there? Can you take a guess at why they live there? I'm guessing that maybe your answer is that they like to be warm and comfortable. Because underneath it says, none live on icy Antarctica. I wonder why they don't live on icy Antarctica. Can you think about that? Can you answer that question for me, please? I have a feeling that I know what your answer is. They don't like the cold weather. They can't survive that. And I'm going to go back to this other book that we read. because this is what we're doing. We're looking for information in both books. So let me go back to the area where they hibernate. Let's see if this is correct. Where it is cold in the winter, the frogs go to sleep. Sometimes they find sheltered hollows. Often frogs dig into the muddy bottom of a pond. All winter they sleep covered with mud. They stay completely motionless. This is called hibernation. Wow, you guys had the right answer. And you see what I was telling you about looking for information that backs each other up? That's what you guys are doing. So let's continue doing that. You did a great job. Now let's go back and find our spot. Frogs Frogs like to live in wet areas. Some live in woods with plenty of wet leaves where they can hide. Some frogs live in the trees. Their toe pads work like suction cups. They can cling to branches, leaves, and other smooth surfaces. Some frogs even burrow into wet ground. Their fingers are like claws. So, we went from the big idea to the smaller idea. So we knew that the big idea was that they lived in all parts of the world except Antarctica. But now I'm thinking of a smaller spot. Like, what does it look like where they live? You see how you go from a big idea to a small idea? Now, you told me where they live in the big idea, big place. Can you now tell me what it is like in the smaller places where they live? I see you're thinking. Yeah, you're right. They live. This is what I imagine you're raising your hand if you were in front of me and would say. Frogs like to live in wet areas. They live in areas where there's wet land. So maybe they live where there are some leaves that are really nice and wet, and they can kind of crawl under there. Or on trees where they can, kind of hide by the tree. Now, can you imagine where these wet areas would be? Would these areas be in? Where would they be? I see you're thinking. I bet you are thinking that they are by maybe the side of a river or maybe a pond. Good thinking. So let's continue. Many frogs are good swimmers. They're connected to what I just said. Their webbed back feet help them swim. However, some frogs will drown if they can't get to land. So, does this sentence here make your initial idea of maybe them living near rivers and ponds correct? It tells us about frogs, doesn't it? So I'm going to now write down what we learned. So the first thing that we learned was that frogs live where there is water and land. Now, let's go back to that big idea that we talked about. Where is that big place that they live? Can you tell me once again? You're right, they live all over the world. So I'm going to write that down. They live all over the world. Now, there was an exception. Do you remember what that exception was? Because you were really right on that. Yeah, you're right. They don't live in Antarctica. They live all over the world except Antarctica. Now, the next thing I want you to do is tell me what is it like in the smaller area? Because, we don't see frogs jumping over buildings and stuff like that. So can you tell me where it is that they live in the smaller areas of the world? Oh, okay, good. You said ponds. That's what I'm imagining that you're thinking. So they live by ponds, rivers, trees, and leaves. Good. So you've done a really good job of thinking about this. Now let's go back and answer our bigger question. Why do they live there? Can you think about that for a second? That's a big question to ask. And I know you've got the answer because you kind of hinted to it when we looked at this area where it said, today's frog live almost everywhere in the world. Hot regions, wet regions known as the tropics have the most frogs. None live on icy Antarctica. Why do they live there? You've got it! They like to live in places where they can get in water and land. You're right. So you did answer your question. That was really good thinking on your part. I'm really proud of you, and I'm really glad that you're doing this. So now what I want you to do is this. We've got a project coming up, and I think it'll be a fun project for you. So I want you to start collecting the insides of a roll of toilet paper and maybe some some cartons, egg cartons, maybe an old shoebox. Start collecting those things. We'll get to them in a few weeks. Actually, I'm hoping that we get to them, maybe start doing it next week. I'll see you next week. Good job, guys, and I'm so happy to see you, even if it's through the camera. Bye-bye.